found them sheltering under a highway overpass in a downpour, a man holding a feverish infant to his chest, both soaked through. This wasn't an unknown homeless man. It was my grandson. For 30 years I believed my son's betrayal had been the deepest wound I would suffer. Emptied bank accounts, my husband's heart attack when he learned of the theft, decades of isolation. I never imagined I'd be standing in the mud beneath concrete, rain seeping through my expensive coat, meeting my husband's eyes in a stranger's face. "James Sterling?" I asked, my voice barely cutting through the storm. He looked up, guarded and wary. "Who are you?" he demanded, shielding the baby from this stranger who had appeared from nowhere. "My name is Alice Sterling," I said, lowering myself to his level. "Your father told you I was dead, but I am your grandmother." The expression on his face in that instant told me everything was about to shift. Before we continue, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're building a community of people who believe the best chapters can begin at any age. Back to the story. For 3 days, the thin black folder sat on my desk, unremarkable, easy to slide between book pages and vanish. My assistant placed it there, without a word, knowing not to mention its contents. 3 mornings I had pretended it wasn't there while I drank my coffee, shuffled papers, made calls. Today I was done pretending. The Atlantic stretched beyond my windows, a vivid blue under the Florida sun. I designed this penthouse after Spencer died. Marble, glass, steel, clean lines, nothing unnecessary. I've lived here 28 years. Sometimes I still feel like a guest. I lifted the folder. It felt lighter than the $30,000 price tag should allow. 6 pages and 1 photograph. Information is cheap these days. Inside was exactly what I expected. The final report from Decker Investigations. Decker himself is retired. His son handled this quietly. The Sterling name still opens doors. The summary named James Spencer Sterling, 28, factory worker, terminated, currently unhoused in Columbus, Ohio. Then the line I kept rereading, parents, Gregory and Brendan Sterling, estranged. My coffee went cold. I had known he existed. I'd hired an investigator years earlier when Gregory disappeared with our money. By then Brendan was pregnant. I wanted to know where they went, what they'd done with Spencer's retirement fund, the emergency accounts, the bonds meant for our grandchildren's education. I found them living comfortably in Seattle, Gregory working at an investment firm, using Spencer's connections and our name. After Spencer's funeral, I shut the investigation down. It seemed pointless. But 3 weeks ago, something woke me at 2 a.m. A sudden alertness. Spencer used to call someone walking over your grave. I made tea and sat waiting. By morning I'd called Decker's son with Gregory's name. I didn't know what I expected after all these years. I didn't expect this. The report was methodical. The slow collapse. James, born in Seattle, moved to Ohio at 6. Average student, no criminal record. Married at 22 to Olivia Whitman. Daughter born 16 months ago. Sophie Marie Sterling. Employed at Midwest Manufacturing for 5 years, recently laid off. Then things unraveled. His wife left with another man. He lost his apartment for missed payments. His car was repossessed. He applied for shelter space and was waitlisted due to overcrowding. He called his parents asking for temporary help. Request denied. I read those 2 words twice. So cold, so familiar. Gregory had denied his own son shelter as he had denied us answers when he emptied our accounts. Some patterns repeat. The final page contained the photograph, grainy, taken from a distance. A man hunched under a highway overpass. Dark hair, thin frame, cradling a bundle wrapped in a faded blue jacket. A small hand reached up toward his face. I set the picture down gently, as if it might crumble. I'm back at our old house on Havenwood Drive. 30 years collapse. The house feels too quiet when I open the door. Spencer's car is in the garage. He doesn't answer. I find him in his study staring at the open wall safe, empty. The antique desk drawers hanging open. He didn't turn when I entered. He just stared at the empty safe. Gregory took it all, he said flatly, as if commenting on weather. I called the bank, the accountant, Gregory's phone repeatedly. No answer. By the time I looked back, Spencer had gone gray, one hand clutching his chest, the other reaching for me. I couldn't reach the phone in time. The doctor called it a massive coronary. Natural causes. I knew better. Spencer Sterling died of a broken heart, betrayed by the son who had been his world. Back in my penthouse, the folder remained open, the photograph still staring up. James and Sophie Sterling, Spencer's grandson and great-granddaughter, living under a bridge because Gregory denied them shelter. For 30 years I'd been a ghost in my life. Running Havenwood Properties filled the days after Spencer's death. I stopped caring, stopped hosting, stopped celebrating. The ladies on my charity committees labeled me an ice queen. I never corrected them. Ice preserves things like rage and purpose. I closed the folder with a soft thud. The decision felt like waking from a long sleep. I pressed the intercom. Margaret, prepare the jet and call Arthur at the car service. I'll need transportation in Columbus, Ohio. Yes, Mrs. Sterling. When will you be departing? She asked. Tomorrow morning, I said. Pack for at least a week, weather appropriate for Ohio. Will anyone accompany you? No. This is personal. I walked to the window. 65 floors below, people moved like insects, small and easy to forget. For decades I'd kept myself above it all, detached. That ends tomorrow. I pressed my palm against the glass. I'm 78. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. A company that carries my husband's name. What I don't have is much time or anything resembling family. The man under that bridge didn't know I existed. Gregory had probably told him I was dead. Another convenient lie. James didn't know about Spencer, about Havenwood, about his inheritance. He didn't know his eyes, if they matched the driver's license photo in the report, were the same deep brown as my husband's. He didn't know, but he would. I haven't prayed since Spencer's funeral, but looking at the ocean I found myself hoping some trace of Spencer lived on in that young man. Tomorrow I'd find out. The jet's engines hummed at a pitch I'd long ignored. 6 hours from West Palm to Columbus. 6 hours to question my sanity. Clouds stretched like a white carpet beneath us. I'd left my lunch untouched. An arranged salmon dish Margaret had ordered. Food had no appeal. I ran on black coffee and determination. The cabin attendant appeared. Mrs. Sterling will be landing in 20 minutes. Your car is confirmed and waiting. Thank you, Jessica. She warned me that Columbus weather was heavy rain. I declined extra arrangements. She nodded and stepped away. I'd employed her for nearly a decade. She still treated me with cautious deference. I suppose I cultivated that. The jet descended through cloud. When it broke, Ohio spread flat and gray below. Nothing like Florida's blues and greens. The landscape matched my mood. Thomas waited by a black Lincoln, with an umbrella. He'd driven for me in 6 cities, never asking questions. Mrs. Sterling, he said with a small nod, while holding the door. Thomas, good to see you. Where to, ma'am? I handed him a folded paper with coordinates. He glanced and showed no change in expression. Of course, he said. The drive was about 30 minutes. Columbus looked like many mid-sized American cities on business trips. Same chain restaurants, car dealerships, billboards promising relief. The sameness was oddly comforting. Then we turned east. Signs of decline appeared. More potholes, fewer new buildings, payday lenders, liquor stores with barred windows, empty lots where businesses had stood. Rain began, heavier with time. The windshield wipers set a hypnotic rhythm. I've owned property in neighborhoods like this. Early in my career, I walked these streets, seeking value under decay. Those were business trips, clinical. This was different. Somewhere here was my grandson. Saying that in my head felt strange. The car slowed under a massive concrete overpass. The highway roared above, traffic amplified by the rain. Through the wet windows I spotted a small encampment beside a support pillar. A blue tarp, a tent, piles that could be possessions or debris. Thomas pulled onto the muddy shoulder. The tires squelched. Ma'am, this doesn't look, he hesitated. Safe, if you tell me what you need I can go for you. No, Thomas. I replied, sharper than intended, then softer. This one is mine. He gave nothing away and kept the engine running. I took my umbrella and stepped out. The rain was a roar, thunder, and the constant beat of trucks overhead. The smell hit me, wet earth, exhaust, and the particular scent of poverty. My Italian leather shoes sank into the mud. I walked toward the encampment, without hesitation, umbrella a flimsy shield. Water splashed my ankles, soaking my pants. Under the bridge, puddles and refuse formed a patchwork. Fast food wrappers, broken glass, a tipped shopping cart. Near a concrete pillar, small tent rippled. Halfway there I heard it, a thin cry, barely audible over the storm. A baby's cry, weak and exhausted. My pace quickened. At the tent flap a man knelt with his back to me, hunched, spine visible beneath a thin t-shirt, as he rocked something in his arms. His movements were gentle and desperate. I stopped just outside the opening, frozen for a moment by the reality of it. This wasn't an abstract problem anymore. He turned sharply, one arm tightening around the bundle, the other bracing to flee. His face, under stubble and exhaustion, was Spencer's, the same strong jaw, the same deep-set eyes, now weary and defensive. "Who are you?" His voice was rough, either from disuse or illness. The baby squirmed, cries growing. She was wrapped in a man's jacket too large for her, her face red, hair plastered with sweat despite the chill. I stepped forward and angled my umbrella to cover the tent opening. Rain pelted me, but I hardly noticed. "She's hot," I said, nodding. "Fever." Confusion crossed his face. "What do you want?" he asked. "We don't have anything." "I'm not here to take from you," I replied. I crouched so we were at eye level, ignoring the mud soaking my knees. "My name is Alice Sterling. No recognition. I am your grandmother." He stared, suspicion replacing confusion. "That's not possible," he said flatly. "My grandparents are dead. Your father told you that about me at least." I held his gaze. Gregory lied. At his father's name, something in him shifted. Not softened, but a different sort of weariness. "I don't know what scam this is, but I'm not interested," he said, standing to leave. The baby cried again, more urgent. "She needs a doctor," I said softly. "You think I don't know that?" he burst out, raw with frustration. "The ER said it was just a cold. They gave me children's Tylenol and sent us away. She's been like this 3 days." I studied him. "When did you last eat?" He looked away. "Yesterday, maybe." His jaw tightened. "Look, I appreciate the concern, but I have a car waiting." "It's warm and dry," I interrupted. "There's food and a pediatrician can see her at my hotel within the hour." He laughed, harsh and humorless. "Right. And what do you want in return?" "Nothing you aren't willing to give," I said. "I'm not asking for trust, I'm asking for a practical decision for your daughter's sake." The baby's cries subsided to whimpers. She looked utterly spent. "Sophie," he said, the name soft as he looked down. "Her name is Sophie." "Sophie," I repeated. The name felt unfamiliar yet right. "Spencer would have liked it." "Who?" he asked. "Your grandfather, my husband." He searched my face for a sign of deceit. What he found instead seemed to be exhaustion that matched his own. "All right," he finally said. "1 hour. Go to your hotel. Sophie sees a doctor. Then we talk. If I don't like what I hear, we walk." I nodded. He gathered a small backpack, everything he owned, and stood steadying himself against the tent pole. "Do you need help?" I asked. "I can carry my own daughter," he replied, pride straightening him. We walked back to the car in silence. Rain pounded around us. Thomas stepped out to open the rear door without showing surprise. As James slid into the warm interior, still clutching Sophie, relief briefly replaced weariness on his face. The look of someone who's been drowning and found solid ground. I followed, closed my umbrella, and left it dripping on the floor mat. "The Granville Hotel," I told Thomas. "And call Dr. Winters. Tell her it's urgent." As we pulled away, I glanced back. The tent was already collapsing under the rain, and would be gone by morning, as if they'd never been there. Some ghost refused to be forgotten. In the hotel suite, I watched Dr. Winters examine Sophie. The shift from bridge to clean sheets had been abrupt and disorienting. Less than 3 hours earlier, they'd been under concrete. Now a pediatrician listened to Sophie's chest. Respiratory infection, Dr. Winters said, removing her stethoscope. She needs antibiotics immediately. You got her help just in time, Mr. Sterling. James had not let go of Sophie's hand. Will she be okay with proper care? He asked. Absolutely, Dr. Winters replied. Warmth, rest, medication, nutrition. She turned to me. Mrs. Sterling says you'll be traveling to Florida tomorrow. James looked uncertain. Only if Sophie's well enough and only if James decides. Dr. Winters nodded. A private flight is better than commercial travel. Less exposure. I'll provide care instructions. After the doctor left, James sat on the bed's edge with Sophie against him, now sleeping more peacefully after medication. Silence stretched between us, dense with unasked questions. There's food, I said finally, indicating the room service card I'd ordered while the doctor examined Sophie. You should eat. He looked at the covered dishes, then back at Sophie. I understood his reluctance to put her down even for a moment. May I? I asked, holding out my arms. His hesitation was brief, but noticeable. Then, carefully, he handed his daughter into my arms. I settled into an armchair, tucking her head into the crook of my elbow. Eat, I said. I've got her. He ate like a man who hadn't had a proper meal in days. Likely true. I kept my eyes on Sophie, giving him the privacy to eat without feeling observed. Her small weight in my arms felt both unfamiliar and oddly familiar. It had been decades since I'd held an infant. After Gregory, then other people's children, then no. Thoughts of Gregory threatened to surface, but I pushed them away. Not now. Why are you doing this? James asked at last, his voice low. It's complicated. I answered. You need rest more than explanations tonight. We can talk on the plane tomorrow. He watched me for a long moment. I don't understand any of this. Why would my father lie that you were dead? Why come now? Fair questions, but long answers. I looked down at Sophie, then back at him. James, I'm offering you and Sophie a safe place in my home, in Florida. Not forever, no strings, just a place to recover and decide what comes next. If you choose to leave, I'll arrange transport wherever you want to go. No conditions. He asked. Why he should trust me. I met his gaze. You shouldn't necessarily. You barely know me, but practically she's getting medical care. You'll have a safe place to sleep tonight, and tomorrow you can decide. He nodded. Exhaustion finally overtook him. Within an hour, both he and Sophie were asleep, and I arranged our departure. Heavenwood appeared as we rounded the drive's last curve. The main house as it had stood for 70 years. White columns, wide verandas, windows catching the late afternoon light. James's face as he took it in held a mixture of awe and unease. This is where you live? He asked, Sophie secure against his chest. This is where Spencer and I lived, I corrected gently. Your grandfather built this the year before we married. The car stopped at the front entrance. Inside, everything had been prepared. A nursery adjacent to the guest suite in the east wing, a nanny I'd arranged due in an hour, and Dr. Leon, the local pediatrician scheduled to check Sophie that evening. James moved through the foyer cautiously, as if the space might break. Sophie, improving on antibiotics, made a small sound. Let me show you your room, I said, guiding him away from the formal areas. The guest suite I'd chosen was comfortable but modest. Bedroom, sitting area, neutral tones. Windows onto the gardens. The connecting nursery was simple and functional. A crib, changing table, rocking chair. Maria will be here soon, I explained. She's not taking over. She's here so you can rest when needed. James stood in the center of the room, looking lost. There are clothes in the dresser, I continued. Basics, t-shirts, jeans. The kitchen is always open. Your room's locked. I produced a smartphone with my number already programmed. Call or text anytime. He accepted it with his free hand. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Get settled, rest. That's what matters. For 3 days, James mostly stayed in his rooms. Maria reported that Sophie was improving quickly on medication and proper care. I gave them space, understanding James needed time to be sure this wasn't a trap. On the fourth evening, I sat in the sunroom with tea and one of Spencer's old photo albums. James stood in the doorway, hesitant. "May I join you?" he asked. "Please," I said, gesturing to the chair opposite. Sophie slept. Maria had shown me how the baby monitor worked. He glanced at the device. "It takes getting used to having help," he said. I nodded and poured his tea the way I'd noticed he liked it. No sugar, a splash of milk. "Did you explore the grounds at all today?" I asked. "A little." "I walked down to the pond," he answered, accepting the cup. "This place wasn't always like this," I said, sliding the album toward him. "Did you know your grandfather built houses with his hands before he ever managed a company?" He looked surprised. "No, my father never talked about him. About either of you." I opened the album to a photo of Spencer working on a roof, hammer in hand, smiling. Spencer had grown up poor, in Georgia. His father was a carpenter who taught him the trade. When Spencer moved to Florida in the 1940s, he started building simple homes for returning veterans. I turned the page to show a row of modest houses, the first Havenwood properties, solid, built to last. James studied the photos, fingers hovering. "He looks happy," I said. "He was happiest working with his hands." I showed a photo of the early office, a converted storage room with a telephone. Spencer used to say, "Havenwood doesn't build houses. We build the place where a family feels safe." James looked up. "Is that why you came? Because of what he believed?" His straightforwardness surprised me. "Partly," I admitted, "but it's more complicated than that." "My father," he said, voice hardening. "What did he do to you?" I closed the album gently. "There are gaps in our family history, 30 years of them. Your father made sure of that. We never saw your childhood photos. We never knew about you growing up. That's something I can't get back." He was quiet. "You said we, you and my grandfather." "Yes," I said. "Spencer never knew you existed. He died not long after your father left." His expression shifted. "I'm sorry." "So am I said. I chose my words carefully. Your father made choices. I don't understand. But Spencer was a good man. He would have moved heaven and earth to know you." Later that night, passing the nursery, I heard a soft low humming. James was rocking Sophie and singing a gentle wordless tune. The melody struck me. Spencer used to hum that same tune while working late in his study. I moved away quietly, not wanting to intrude. Walking the silent house, my fingers grazed the walls. For 30 years Havenwood had felt like a museum to my loss. Tonight it felt like a home. A bright, warm Florida morning followed. I sat across from James on the patio breakfast table, watching him spread jam on toast for Sophie, who babbled happily in a high chair. It was a far cry from the feverish child under the bridge 6 months earlier. Sometimes those 6 months felt like days, sometimes like years. James had filled out his face healthier, his eyes clearer. He'd found a routine, morning walks with Sophie around the grounds, helping Maria with chores, reading from Spencer's library. He was healing, but restlessness began to show. A man like him needed purpose. "Have you thought about what's next?" I asked casually. He guardedly replied, "I've applied for jobs. Factory work mostly. There's a plant near here hiring." I considered, that's certainly an option. Sophie smashed her toast gleefully. James wiped her fingers tenderly. His devotion reminded me of Spencer, quiet and unwavering. "May I make an observation?" I asked. "Of course. Havenwood Properties has 100 agents who can sell a 4-bedroom house. What we lack are enough people who know how to make it a home." I set down my cup. "You had a home ripped away, you fought to make one under a bridge. You understand that better than any MBA. He frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "We have an opening for an assistant project manager. Entry level, long hours, not glamorous." I held his gaze. "This isn't a gift. It's an opportunity. You'll start at the bottom. No one will know who you are. Success or failure will be yours. He was quiet, turning Sophie's sippy cup in his hands. I don't have experience in real estate. Neither did Spencer when he began building homes for veterans. I said, you have a perspective that matters. You'll apply and interview like everyone else. No one at the company knows our connection. That's your choice to tell or keep private. You won't get special treatment. You'll probably have to work twice as hard. I stood gathering my napkin. Think about it. The position starts next Monday. If interested, I'll have HR set an interview tomorrow. I left him to decide. By dinner, he had his answer. 2 days later, he walked into Havenwood Properties headquarters for his interview, wearing a suit he must have bought himself. Not expensive, but it fit. He looked like one of us. James's first year at Havenwood was baptism by fire. I ensured he received no special attention. Quite the opposite. His supervisor, Martin Reeves, was notoriously exacting. James buried himself in zoning regs, impact reports, market analyses, and on weekends ran open houses, set up signs, and brewed coffee for senior agents. I observed from a distance. Each month I received the same excellent performance evaluations others did. His strength wasn't natural talent for real estate, but methodical focus, reliability, and listening, traits from his time in factory work. By his second year, he'd moved into a junior sales role. I happened to be at the main office one afternoon when he worked with a young couple, teachers with a baby. I watched from the next-door conference room. He asked practical questions. Morning routines, commute times, where they spent most of their time. When they said the kitchen table was central, he focused their search on homes with that feature. He built a picture of their life, not a wish list. By the end, he'd narrowed options to 3 suitable houses under budget. They closed on a modest 3-bedroom in a good school district. Their smaller commission mattered less than the family's happiness. They sent a holiday card with a front porch photo that December, which James pinned to his cubicle wall. Word spread. Clients asked for the young man who listens. Colleagues who dismissed him began to take notice. By his 3rd year, James was promoted to senior project manager, overseeing a new community in Jupiter. Havenwood Shores, 50 homes aimed at young families priced below luxury, but built to last. I attended planning meetings, watching James transform from the man under the bridge into a leader who commanded respect through competence and empathy. He insisted on green spaces, wide sidewalks for strollers, and a community center with childcare. People aren't buying just houses, he told the team. They're buying the space between front doors, the walk to school, the view from the kitchen window. His team listened because he'd earned their trust. No one at the company knew of our connection. They knew only the manager whose developments consistently sold out. Sophie was 4 now, bright and curious, in Havenwood's corporate daycare. James had moved them into a modest house 15 minutes from my estate. Close enough for visits, independent enough to be their own home. Our relationship settled into Sunday dinners and occasional weeknight visits. I never spoke of Gregory. James never asked. The annual executive meeting took place the first Monday in October. The company had grown from Spencer's modest home-building business into one of Florida's leading developers. I'd run it alone for 30 years. I was tired. The boardroom was full, all expecting the usual review. James sat midway down the table with his portfolio open. At 31, he was one of the youngest senior managers, but he'd earned his place. I stood at the head of the table, surveyed competent faces, and began. 30 years ago, I said, my husband Spencer told our small team that Havenwood wasn't in the business of building houses. We build futures. I let that settle. Spencer believed in foundations for families and legacies of integrity. I moved around the table, meeting each person's eye. For 30 years I'd searched for a successor who shared that vision, not just someone who could read a balance sheet, but someone who understood the value of a key in a family's hand. My gaze landed on James. I have found that person, I continued. Someone who started at the bottom and proved their worth through integrity and empathy. Heads turned. Effective today, the new CEO of Havenwood Properties is James Sterling. Silence filled the room. James's shock was evident. Faces shifted from surprise to calculation to acceptance. Some VPs nodded slowly. They'd seen his results and leadership. I gestured to him. Would you like to say a few words? He rose slowly, collecting himself. As he paused beside me, he whispered, "Why?" "Because you are Spencer's legacy," I replied softly. "And mine." He addressed the room, uncertainty giving way to quiet confidence. I sat and watched the company's future begin to take shape under his leadership. Changed by him, but with the heart of what home means kept intact. Later, in my office at Havenwood Tower reviewing reports, Margaret buzzed. Two people in the lobby insisting on seeing Mr. Sterling. Persistent, unappointed. Did they give names? Mr. and Mrs. Gregory Sterling, she replied after a pause. The name hit me like a blow. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Should I have security escort them out? She asked. I gathered myself. No. Tell them Mr. Sterling is unavailable. I'll come down. The elevator ride was 17 floors of memory. Gregory as a toddler, running to Spencer. Gregory at 12 proudly showing a model house. Gregory at 20 demanding early access to his trust. I'd seen entitlement grow. Spencer had been blind to it. The lobby doors opened onto gleaming marble. There they were. Gregory thinner, gray at the temples, lines around his mouth but unmistakably my son, and the woman beside him, Brenda, in clothes once expensive but now worn. Gregory gestured at the guard. Don't think you understand who I am. I'm his father. I demand to see him. As I explained, sir, Mr. Sterling isn't available without an appointment, the guard replied. Then make an appointment. Tell him his parents are here. I crossed the lobby, my heels clicked on the marble, and caught their attention. Gregory's irritation froze when he saw me. Hello, Gregory, I said, my voice steady. He paled. Mother, Brenda's eyes widened. Alice, she said, tense, forcing composure. It's been a long time. We've been trying to reach James. I know why you're here. I cut in, looking straight at Gregory. The news about James's appointment had run in the business pages. You think there's money to be had? That's not fair, Gregory protested, but his voice lacked force. We're his parents. We have a right. A right? I repeated the word coldly. Let's talk about rights, but not here. I signaled the security guard. Please escort these visitors to conference room B, and notify Mr. Sterling's assistant that he must not be disturbed for any reason. Yes, Mrs. Sterling. Gregory and Brenda exchanged glances and followed the guard. I took the elevator alone, needing a few quiet moments to steady myself. The conference room was small. Glass table, 6 chairs. They sat, I remained standing. You look well, Mother, Gregory said with that familiar smooth tone. It's been too long. 30 years, 4 months and 16 days, I answered. Since the day you emptied our accounts and disappeared. He looked uncomfortable, briefly. You must be angry, he said. Angry? I cut him off. Anger is a luxury for the living. I wasn't living, Gregory. We made mistakes, Brenda interjected. We were young. But we're James's parents. We have a relationship to rebuild. A relationship? I asked, voice low. Which one? The one where you refused to take in your son and granddaughter when they had nowhere else to go? Or the one where you told James I was dead? Gregory shifted. We had our reasons. Do you know where I found your son? I leaned forward, hands on the table. Under a highway bridge in the rain, his child burning with fever. That's where your relationship left him. Brenda flushed. We were having financial difficulties, she said. You were having financial difficulties, I repeated, each word sharp. And your solution was to let your son and his baby live under a bridge. I straightened. Your father died because of what you did to us. Did you know that? The doctor called it a heart attack, but it was a broken heart. Spencer died in his study, staring at the empty safe, where our savings were. Gregory paled. I didn't. I never meant. You didn't mean for him to die, perhaps. But you meant to steal. You meant to lie. You used his name to get a position in Seattle. And now you mean to use James. Brenda protested. That's not fair. We lost everything in bad investments. We're trying to reconnect with our son. Family? I echoed, barely above a whisper. Family doesn't abandon a child under a bridge. Family doesn't build a life on lies that killed their own father. I reached into my pocket and slid a folded document onto the table. This is a restraining order. It prohibits both of you from contacting James or Sophie in any way and bars you from entering any Havenwood property. I pushed another paper forward. This is evidence of the theft from our accounts. The statute of limitations may have passed, but should you contest the restraining order, I will make this public. Gregory stared at the documents, then at me. You can't do this. He's our son. He was your son, I said simply. You gave up that right when you left him under that bridge. I opened the door. 2 security guards waited. These gentlemen will escort you out. If you return, you will be arrested for trespassing. Brenda rose angrily. You self-righteous. You think you can steal our son, buy his loyalty with money. I regarded her calmly. I didn't buy anything, Brenda. I offered him what you never did. The truth and a choice. Gregory stood then, defeated. Does he know what I did to you and Dad? Yes, I answered. I told him everything. He made his peace and still accepted the CEO role because it's his grandfather's company. Are you proud of what you've done, turning my son against me? He asked. I didn't turn him against you, I replied. You did that yourself. I held the door wider. Goodbye. They left, Brenda head high. Gregory slumped. Only after the elevator doors closed did I allow myself to sink into a chair. My composure cracked. A soft knock followed. Alice? James stood in the doorway, concern written across his face. Margaret told me what happened. I straightened. I'm sorry, I should have let you handle it. He crossed the room and, to my surprise, took my hand. It was exactly your place, he said quietly. You protected your family as you did at the bridge. I looked at the man who had become the center of my world. They'll try again. People like that always do. We'll handle it together. He smiled faintly. Sophie's downstairs in daycare. She made something for you in art class. Want to see it? I nodded, my throat tight. The view from the CEO's office was stunning. City on one side, ocean on the other. The 3 of us stood on the private balcony, Sophie between us holding both our hands. Higher, she demanded. On 3, James and I lifted her, swinging her between us. Her laughter traveled on the sea breeze. At 5, she was all curiosity and motion. Dark curls bouncing as she ran to inspect the model of the New Havenwood community being built in Orlando. James watched her, smiling. The board approved the Affordable Housing Initiative this morning. Construction starts next month, he said. Pride warmed me. Spencer would have loved that project. I wish I could have known him, James said softly. You do, I replied. Every time you place a family in an affordable home, every time you choose integrity over profit, he lives in you and in her. We watched Sophie rearrange tiny model trees. Spencer's eyes, his steady resolve, lived in that small focus. After a pause, James said, The penthouse is too big for just me and Sophie, and your estate has a lot of empty rooms. I looked up, surprised. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? He shrugged, a hint of a smile. Sophie misses breakfast with you. And that commute from Palm Beach is brutal. Havenwood was built for a family. I said softly. It had waited a long time to be one again. Sophie bounded back, breathless with a new question. Grandma Alice, are there fish in the fountain downstairs? Can we get fish for our pond? I caught James's eye and saw my own feeling mirrored there. I think that could be arranged, I told her, smoothing her curls. Your grandfather would insist on it. The sun set, casting golden light across the city. For 30 years I'd been a ghost in my own life, preserving what was instead of building what could be. Now, with Sophie's small hand in mine, and James at my side, I stepped into the light. Gregory's cycle of pain had been broken. Spencer's legacy was secure. I, Alice Sterling, was no longer a ghost in an empty house. I was home. That's my story. Tell me what you think. Would you have forgiven a son like Gregory, or was I right to cut him off for good? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like mine.